Welcome, everybody, to today's edition of Pro Mindset Podcast. This is Craig Domann, your host, and today we have a guest who is an award-winning entrepreneur. She's an international speaker. She's a creator. She has her own podcast. It's called Perfectly Imperfect, which I love that description because all of us were born and created perfectly imperfect. And she's also the founder of the Inner Circle. And I want to welcome today Kelly Lynn Adams. Kelly, welcome to Pro Mindset.
Thanks, Craig, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, Kelly, you have a lot of things shaken. You've been doing this for 20 plus years. You're, very successful in a lot of multi places, like multi-international, large corporations, all these things. What is the secret to your success, and why do people want to listen to you? And why do people value what you bring to the universe in terms of your specialty?
That's a loaded question, Craig.
I know.
I listen to what people are saying and not saying. And I think what has really worked for me, especially even in corporate, spending 20 plus years in corporate, really listening, right? Listening and being like, okay, what is actually being said and what is actually not being said. And I'm very intuitive as well, but I'm also very resilient. I wasn't born like this, award winning. And I'm a really hard worker as well. And if I fail, I just keep on going, and I'm very resilient. And yeah, I think that's what I attribute a lot of the success to, and just getting gritty and not stopping until I get what I want. And sometimes it doesn't look like the way that I want it, but it's this or something better. I always tell myself.
Okay. So Kelly, let's go where the message is always a byproduct of our messes.
Yeah.
And our pain ends up becoming our passion. On your website, you talk about the idea that you've experienced depression. You've experienced anxiety and stress and imposter syndrome throughout your years, throughout your lifetime. What is the value and the benefit of your dark moments that now that you're in the light and you're on stage, you're behind the mic, you're a valued consultant person for organizations and individuals, how did those dark moments manifest into your wisdom today?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I've battled with depression, anxiety. I landed in the hospital from overworking because I was working so much. I had an addiction to work, had a couple of addictions. And actually just recently, with the past 18 months, has been very hard for me because my grandma passed away actually a year ago today. And so it's for me, you're exactly right when you say your mess becomes your message. Because in each one of those areas, and listen, it's not to say that I don't still get depressed or I don't still have anxiety. That occurs. That's a real thing. And even with the grief, my grandma passing away, she was very, very dear and near to my heart. And this is not my first rodeo with grief either, but it hit a little bit differently. So I really had to figure things out and just allow myself also to be in the mess. I think what a lot of people and myself, what I was doing before is I was doing everything over the feelings. I was trying to escape it. I was trying to feel better without maybe grieving or crying, overworking over it, eating over it, shopping over it. And when I did a lot of the trauma healing that I did a couple years ago, and I'm still healing, I'm still doing the work, is just allowing myself to really feel the emotions, be in the process. And there's a certain thing where, if it's, depression, right? Like if I was depressed for, say, a month, I would actually limit my downtime and be like, okay, can I just be depressed for 2 weeks instead of the whole 4 weeks? So it's really for me, I think it's a actualized journey, and to say, okay, how can I get better than who I was yesterday? It's like constantly like an evolution of, okay, who am I becoming? What can I learn and what can I unlearn?
Let's talk about unlearning. What does that mean?
Unlearning. So I'm sure some of the listeners know, and is from when we were ages 0 to 7 and even past 7 years old, we're programmed with our experiences, things that were occurring around us, mindset. Everyone has a relationship with money. Everyone has a relationship with love. And so we have these paradigms, as some people call them, and belief systems and perspectives. And I always like to say to people, imagine everyone's wearing a pair of sunglasses with a different shade of colored lenses. So you might be wearing blue shade of lenses. I might be wearing pink, and we all see things in a different lens. So some of the lenses do not serve us. Some of the colors do not serve us. And so for me, the unlearning is the things that are potentially holding us back or me back. For example, money. What is your relationship with money? Sometimes if people struggled with money, they think I have to work so hard to get money. Other people are like, I'll just make my money work for me and I'll hire other people to do my work. So it's different things like that. And it's some of these looking at our belief systems and seeing, okay, and it's different for everyone. It's like, where am I holding myself back, or where is the belief or the story or the narrative that I'm telling myself, holding myself back? And what can I unlearn? How can I do something differently? How can I maybe not do the same thing that is not working, maybe in this season, and do something else?
Okay, young lady. I love that because it's so true. And that programming becomes part of our identity, and it travels with us throughout our lifetime unless we basically drop that baggage off. And in competition and performance and life in general, people right now especially are living in a very heavy phase. The world, the US, the politics, the inflation, the stress, the idea that we have access in our hands at all times through our phones creates stress. We don't get downtime. We don't get breaks. We can't get away. People expect us to answer the phone. People know we have our phone with us. So when people don't answer your phone, you know they're hiding from you, or they don't want to talk to you. Creates more stress. So in this age of advancement, we also have a downgrade. So we have an upgrade in technology. We have a downgrade in our mental state. Fair?
Yes, 100%. I agree.
And so, I see it in going back to performance. I see that, what somebody told them or what you thought they were thinking, or they said something and you thought it meant something else, ends up becoming our programming. So how does a person develop the emotional intelligence and the emotional awareness to even realize that they're on this hamster wheel of sorts on how they respond to certain situations, how they're triggered by certain people, parents, friends, exes, current spouses, whoever it may be, the current boss? How did people even become aware? Because awareness is always step one.
100%. So I always like to say, get curious. Like if someone, like you said, all the situation usually occurs in relationships, and we're already sometimes stressed, right? And in the trauma world, that's called as like hyper vigilant. We're already like, okay, on edge, or very hyper aware of what's going on. Sometimes we're not because we're so stressed, but the hyper vigilance of like, if someone says something when you're in a mood, or someone else kind of pissed you off, you might fly off the handle, right? So it's getting curious of being like, why am I feeling this way? Like, what is occurring? What is the story I might be telling myself? And it could be total facts. It could be like, this is absolutely true. And so it's getting curious with yourself of like, what else is there? And when we also get to feel our emotions, because really an emotion that you feel, like say you're angry or say you're happy, that initial emotion, we get to feel it for 90 seconds, like a true, just like present moment emotion gets experienced for 90 seconds. Now, if you go over 90 seconds, sometimes it's like, okay, what's still underneath? Like maybe someone pissed you off in the same way 5 years ago. And that like, it's like, oh my gosh, this happened to me, just last week or 2 years ago. Why does this keep happening to me? So that's why I say get curious first. Cause it's like, sometimes it is the actual, events that happen or the person but it's like, what is it within me? I like to say your side of the street. taking radical responsibility of being like, okay, why is this disturbing me, triggering me? There's something there. There's information that I want to get more curious about and know. And then also feeling it. But I like what you said about identity, because everything starts from our identity. So it's like, if you shift your identity, you take on a new identity. I like to call it, creating an ideal scene for yourself or your future self. And it's like, how would that person talk, respond, be in the world, even if they're upset, triggered, disturbed, whatever. And the identity piece it really does start with identity, because then it's the thoughts, it's behaviors, it's the actions, it's all of those things, kind of like a tree branches off our identity. So I love that. And it's kind of like that movie 13 going on 30, right? Where they switch identities. It's like, oh, okay, they are someone else. So I love that you said identity, because that's definitely a big part of my work and what I've worked on with myself, still do. It's like we all have a future version of ourselves. It could be how we look, what we want to achieve, what we want to feel, what type of relationships we want to be in, and navigating life and making choices and decisions according to that identity.
So a couple things I take away from that. One is that you get to decide how you want to show up in certain situations and how you want to respond and how you want to feel. But unfortunately, you find yourself responding maybe in a negative fashion with anger, shame, whatever it might be, a million different ones, because you didn't anticipate it happening. I think the thing that happens like in sports and in life is that there are some things you can anticipate are going to happen. You're going to go to your in-laws for, one of the holiday dinners, and you can, if you have kind of a rough relationship with some family member, you can anticipate a conversation and what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get thrown curveballs, it was a surprise. And so what I see is that, number one, you need to understand you need to be intentional about what you want your identity to be and how you want to respond in those situations that you can anticipate. And then in those situations where you can't anticipate them, and you perhaps don't respond in the manner that like in a graceful way. When you're outside of that space and time, when you're outside of that moment, you need to reflect on what you felt, why you felt it, so that the next time it happens, you can show up differently, you can respond differently.
Yes, 100%. Even just for a picture, so people have a picture of this, it's kind of like, think of a glass of water and maybe there's dye, right? Maybe there's pink dye. Pink is my favorite color, by the way. That's why I keep saying pink. Pink dye in the water. And so the pink dye is like all of the things that have occurred, maybe that have triggered you or disturbed you. And it's like, we get to actually the work and the identity. And like you said, the decision and being intentional, that's pouring more water. Those things are pouring more water to clear away the pink, right, of the water. And then guess what? Like you said, unexpected, another dye of, drop a pink dye comes in the water. Unexpected, COVID, unexpected, right? Different things, grief, death, unexpected sometimes. So, and that's why it's so important that the work gets to be done like a constant, it's like working out. We just don't have a great workout for a week and then we stop if we're in training or we want to build muscle or release weight, right? So it's being intentional and doing it on like a consistent basis too.
It almost has to be part of your mental operating system that you're monitoring and regulating and observing your responses, your emotional response to situations. And there's no question that you want to enjoy the moment, be in the moment, whether it's love, whether it's competition, or whether it's, working it, whatever it is. But you also want to have some perspective and awareness of how did you show up and respond to those various situations. So like in athletics, if a quarterback's feeling stress because it's a pressure moment, it's like, we got to get a touchdown or we're going to lose the game. The best thing the quarterback can do is go back and review not just his performance in executing the play, but his mental response to that situation. So the next time he's in that situation, he can show up better.
Yes, I love that. And in coaching, I learned a phrase called edging, which in the sports world, right? It's say a football player with the stadium noise when no one's there, right? It's like training. It's like edging, like experiencing the already thing that's going to happen. So it's like the noise can't throw you off. The noise can't distract you. So we're going to actually fill the field with all the noise while you're practicing so you don't get distracted. So it's actually pushing your edges, right? And being, okay, I'm going to edge myself up to the point of and experience it in my body and my brain and the visualization and all of that. And then come back down. And then if like also even not in sports, I like to call it, and it's known like nervous system regulation, where when you are in those peak moments that you're like, oh my gosh, you're going to either freak out or explode. It's like, okay, how can I regulate my nervous system? And you can regulate your nervous system up and down. So even if you're procrastinating and you're lazy, you can actually rev it up, but also you can rev it down where it's like going outside for 2 seconds, doing breathing, taking 3 deep breaths, putting your hand in your belly, putting your hand in your heart. Like there's certain, responses that we can do and actions we can take to regulate the nervous system. But also we're talking about polarity here because we can regulate the nervous system, but then we can edge ourselves and experience and push ourselves to that in training, right? Like in sports. So.
Well, take a page out of theater. They always do dress rehearsals.
Yes.
And the more you can do a dress rehearsal in whatever field you're in, and put yourself in that environment ahead of time, whether it's not just visualization or imaging, but also like creating that environment.
Yeah.
And practicing in that environment that you anticipate, you're going to be better. You're going to show up better. You're going to have more emotional control. You're not going to, you can handle a couple of body punches if you get them because you've already prepared for that, as opposed to just putting your nose to the grindstone, working your butt off, being ready to go, showing up, and then stuff doesn't happen like you expected.
Yeah.
And then you lose emotional control. People may not be able to see it, but you can feel it, and it throws you off your game.
Yeah. And going back to your intentionality, right? So back to the sports example, even if something triggers you, right? When you're in the moment, you see some sports players get real nasty and like actually take a swing or a punch at the other opponent, right? You're like, what the heck? And then you see other players being like, you know what? I'm going to fuel this into the game, right? So it's like, I love when you said it because it has to do with a lot of intentionality. Like, where are you going to fuel that feeling? Because we're all human. We're not AI robots yet. So we have these feelings and it's like, okay, how am I going to intentionally drive that, right? That feeling into what, right? Curiosity, into the game, into healing, into whatever that is in the moment that's going to make you better in a sense.
So just to kind of regurgitate what you mentioned there was you have to have a plan for intentionally directing that icky emotion you're feeling in some way. Because if you don't direct it, you don't, like I could talk about having a performance bubble when you perform so that, and you regulate your nervous system and your mental state of mind during your performance. When you have a thought, you start telling yourself negative things or somebody throws you a curveball, you send it out of your performance bubble. It does not affect you. And you are consciously aware that it might come in lots of different fashions, but however it shows up, you don't let it affect how you perform. And so I love the idea. I mean, it's almost like recycling.
Yeah.
Recycling. You can't absorb that triggered emotion. You've got to recycle it. You got to send it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so powerful too, because I don't know if anyone has worked with horses. Well, horses are the animals where they're actually picking up on your energy, your frequency. Like they really don't move when you're calling them. You can't call them like a dog. You can't like wave your arms. Like they just don't respond. They're going to respond to, and they feel the feelings. They'll feel the confidence. They'll feel the anger. they'll feel whatever, and you could actually not control, but like, yes, control them and move them. They can also feel timid, right? Are you scared of the horse? Are you nervous? So I love this because I love the idea of recycling and also being, again, back to intentionality and awareness. What is the feeling that you can also shift, right? Because we can shift a feeling in any state. It's like the story in the state, right? We can shift that in a moment when we need to.
Well, going into the horse place, we have horses. My wife's been a horse person her entire life. My daughter absolutely loves horses. I'm growing more and more fond of our horses. I really, I take care of them, all this stuff. But when I ride them, I can feel them feeling me out. They're trying to every time I get on, it's like, okay, is this guy scared of me? Am I going to be in control, or is he going to be in control? Can I do what I want and eat grass along the road whenever I want, or am I going to be obedient to whatever his commands are? And there's always a little tug of war, so to speak, in the first handful of minutes where the horse is testing you.
Yeah.
So when you first get on the horse, they're testing you because they're trying to figure you out. They're trying to figure out what can they get away with, what kind of mood you're in, those kind of things. And so absolutely, that's real stuff right there. Okay, Kelly, let's pivot for a second.
Sure.
Let's focus. Let's dive into the topic of limiting beliefs, glass ceilings. We're our own worst enemy. All of those things that describe when we're trying to achieve greatness and be everything God created us to be and do everything we've been trained to do and desire to do and goals that we have, but we're our own worst enemy. We set the limit on ourselves more than the people that we think are setting the limits on ourselves. What does that mean in your world? How do you coach people? How do you identify it? And how do you train your clients to shift so that they don't limit their own beliefs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So back to like a visual story. I forget where I first heard this, but it's not mine. Where the elephant or maybe a horse. No, I think it was an elephant, where the string was around an elephant's leg and it was tied to a plastic chair as a baby. And they didn't move the chair because at that time, maybe the chair was heavier than the elephant, right? Or the horse. I forget what it was. But then as they grow up, they still stand in that same spot with the string on their leg because, again, with the horse example, they don't think they can move because the chair is heavier, but meanwhile, they're heavier now. So, and the same thing, there's also a video about fleas in a jar where scientists were putting fleas in a jar, put the cap on top of the jar, and the fleas were like trying to get out of the jar, but they would hit this ceiling, right? That they would hit the cap, the top. And over a couple of weeks or months, the fleas would, well, you know what? I'm not going to try to get out of the jar. So the fleas would literally just circle at the bottom or the middle of the jar. The scientist takes off the cap to the jar and the fleas stayed in the lower to middle. None of the fleas tried to get out of the jar. So I love that bringing this up because that's like us, right? These human beings, we have these limiting beliefs or these narratives or these stories that wherever they came from, right? And maybe ingrained from caretakers or society or people saying, no, you can't do that, or us failing. Yeah.
Kelly, let me jump in here for a second. Okay. So I'm very familiar with the horses and the elephants.
Yeah.
Wasn't aware of the fleas, but I want to frame this in a way where what happens is when you're training a horses are born wild, and you tie them up to a tree or to a post that they can't move, so that later on you could tie them up to a flower. But because they've got a rope, they don't know any difference. And so the same thing happens with elephants. You tie them up to the strongest thing you got, and they'll just start pulling with their trunks, and they can't move it. So then they believe for the rest of their lives that they can't move it, so they stop trying. So now let's go back to human psychology and human behavior. What is it that you really did fail. You really couldn't do it. That you thought would be that way for the rest of your life when it was only a temporary set.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So take it away.
Yeah. So it's ingrained in our memory, right? It's ingrained in our experience. It's, oh, well, this is proven. Of course you believe it. And then you continue to believe it's like, it doesn't fit anymore, right? It's like clothes. It doesn't fit. It may fit. It may have fit for that season, that experience, that time, but now it doesn't fit anymore. So, but we hold on. And this also is, from my experience, it goes into like attachment theory work and also just, neuroplasticity and NLP and all those things. And so it's real. Some people are like, well, no, that actually happened. And yes, that could be true. But I always like to tell the people in my world is like, how about we play in the possibility of, right? How about we just play in the possibility of? If you want to double your prices, right, in your business, why can't you? What is that? Like, why can't we just play, right, in the possibility? And so that's where, right, the holding back occurs. It's like, well, it's unfamiliar. It's unknown. What if I fail again? Then it just, right, ingrains, oh, I can't do that. And say, it's kind of like swing a baseball bat, right? If I miss once, if I miss 5 times, I'm going to swing again. Like, how many times do I have to keep swinging? Prove, right, that it is. Yeah. So it's definitely, but this is where the awareness, the intention, and also, this is where also healing work comes in. My belief is when you're doing this healing work, because some of this stems from, depends on the issue, childhood, right? The inner child work. When I was 6, this is what occurred. And maybe I'm not even going to experiment again with, the same thing. So we're constantly evolving. Our bodies are changing every 7 years as well. So it's like, okay, how about we play in the possibility? So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's so true for some people.
Okay. So I'm going to jump on the bandwagon here, Kelly. Playing in the possibilities is having a growth mindset. It's having that perspective that what happened to me X years ago isn't necessarily what's going to happen to me now. And so the mind picture that I have is the basketball kid in middle school who's like 5'10" and can't dunk the ball. And next thing you know, he's 6'4" and he still doesn't think he can dunk it. No, it's like, well, he can dunk it now because he grew. So emotionally and intellectually, we continue to evolve and grow. And so something that we couldn't do before, we may be able to do now, but for the fact that we don't quit and we don't get stuck in that belief. So I love the idea that we have to play in the possibility of, because that just says what happened yesterday. You might have been, if you're a salesperson, you might have been told no 10 times and you don't want to call that person back again. Well, today's a new day. Circumstances could have changed or maybe more time than a day, but it's like, don't eliminate all the possibilities. So as humans, we're possibility eliminators.
Yeah.
When we like, it's so funny because like when you talk to elementary school kids and you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They can say anything. And what do you say?
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't wait.
It doesn't matter what they say. You're like, go for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. The odds are against them. They want to be an NBA center and they're on the 1 percentile on the growth chart. Doesn't matter. You encourage. But then once you hit middle school and high school, the world starts telling you you're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not athletic enough. You just don't have what it takes. So maybe you should start changing your dream. And that's when you just put a lid on your own jar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I like to say it's being delusional regardless of external circumstances, right? There has to be a little bit of delusion because Michael Jordan, I just heard this. I didn't know this, that he didn't make his high school basketball team or something, or elementary basketball. He didn't make
freshman team in high school. He was cut.
He was cut. Okay. So if he stopped then, right? Or stopped in college or what, right? Stopped anywhere along the lines, he wouldn't be Michael Jordan. So there's a little bit of delusion, regardless of external circumstances, and the grit, right? Like, I'm going to do it. No, and it comes from the delusion, but it's like, I'm going to outwork. Now, not outwork, because I don't want to go into like the burnout conversation, right? We're not going to outwork to our detriment. I did that. I landed in the hospital. That doesn't really work. And if it does, you get like the nice satisfaction for 2.5 seconds. And then, you got to continue the hamster wheel. But he had the grit, right? And it's the no matter what. It's like a fine line between no matter what and grit, holding a delusion and having that action and that mindset to do that. So you do have to be a little bit delusional, but you could be delusional, in this direction or that direction, right? Pick your delusion. We're literally, like everyone says, oh, we're living in a matrix anyway. Everything's made up. Okay. Well, make up your own story, right? So it's that kind of illusion, because a lot of people that make up their own story and have the grit and take the action, it has to come. Now, might not look in the same picture frame that you imagined it, but that's where I like to say, I like to surrender and have some grace of being like, it's this or something better. If I'm delusional and I'm putting in the work, it has to be this or something better.
Okay. So I have represented over 300 NFL players over the years, and the ones that have gone the farthest have been the most delusional. Absolutely true. They all had talent, but they had this delusion about their abilities. They had confidence that was beyond their circumstances. They didn't believe what the external world told them, the scouts, the coaches, the media. They ignored it all. And they just said, I'm going to believe what I'm going to believe. I am who I want to be, not what everybody else is telling me I am. And they shattered other people's expectations of them. They didn't shatter their own. They shattered others. And so I think, the best way I can kind of like package it is that we have a choice between an inside game and an outside game. The inside game is you're just about you. Outside game is you care too much. You're a people pleaser. You want to know what other people think. You care what other people think. You will respond and change your behavior, your actions, and your goals based upon what other people tell you. And worse than that, sometimes you will change and pivot on your goals because what you think other people think that they may not even think, but you think they think.
Yes.
How silly is that?
So silly. So silly. And it's like, are we going to, I love this because the narrative too, it's like, are we going to believe, or it could be all lies, because it's our own stories that we are thinking. And it's like, oh my gosh, are we going to really feed that? Like, what are we feeding? Our own delusion or someone else? Because listen, we're all being marketed to every single day, every single minute. Social media is marketing us to buy a belief or product or something. And it's like, oh my gosh, and it can get confusing. I didn't really grow up with social media so inundated like now. So it's like everywhere you turn, right? And the media. So it's like, wow, we really got to also for the next generations, instill this keep the bottle of the delusion.
Well, in like connecting to your podcast title.
Yeah.
Perfectly perfect, or perfectly imperfect, or whichever direction it is. So both mean the same thing to me. You're either perfectly imperfect or you're imperfectly perfect.
Right.
In that concept, it's the idea that you don't have to worry about trying to pursue perfection. That will kill your identity. Just like comparing yourself, trying to keep up with the Joneses, looking like somebody else, living in the same neighborhood, having the same kind of car, all those things that people do, it kills your identity. So I have kind of identified 4 main identity killers. Perfection and comparison are 2 of the biggest ones. Another one is desperation. And people get desperate when they think that they're holding on to their dream, but it's slipping out of their hands. They feel it slipping away for a variety of different reasons. They get desperate. So in business, you take uncalculated risks that you shouldn't take, perhaps financially. In sports, you try to make a play that's not even there and you look like a fool and you help your team lose. And then the other one is when you're a scoreboard watcher. When you're watching the scoreboard and it's a kind of a subset of comparison, but it's like, why don't you focus on, you have a choice, win or be your best.
Yes.
Okay. So if you be your best and that's your mindset, you don't have to look at the scoreboard. But if you're trying to win, you look at the scoreboard and then you find yourself coasting, creating bad habits. Maybe your goal is to make X $100,000 this year and you're going into the last couple of months and you've already made it. So now you just like screw around all day. So if you wouldn't watch the scoreboard, wouldn't watch your bank account, you might make a lot more money than you even thought you.
Yes. And it's like getting comfortable. What just came up for me is like getting comfortable, but then also distractions. Like, are you distracting your own self from being like, oh yeah, I'm good. Right? I always say this, like we're at the end of the year, right? As we're or end of the quarter, take anything, end of whatever. And some people, like you say, when they hit their goal that they had, it's like, well, why do you stop before the finish line? Like, why are we slowing down? Why are we stopping? Like, just because you may have, and some people are in sales, maybe they make their quota in the first week or first 2 weeks in the month. And they're like, oh, I'm good. Really? Like, why are we stopping? Why are we slowing down? Let's see. How good can it, that's another question. One of my coaches asked me, how good can you stand it? A lot of us, it's like, oh my gosh, how good can I stand it? Am I worried that the other shoe's going to drop? Do I feel worthy enough to have all these amazing things coming to me, and me experiencing it? Cause I was actually limiting myself with like the happiness and the joy and the, like, oh my gosh, how good, like sometimes like that one part of my life, I was like, everything was going so well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can I actually receive this? And is something bad going to happen? It's like, no, how good can you stand it? And cause we're so right. A lot of us are focused on, well, I was at the time, like getting shut down and shut down and shut down. And then finally it opens up and you're like, oh my gosh, is this real?
I think something that happens to a lot of people is when things are going really well, their mind starts telling them, okay, look around the next corner, be ready. It's coming. The failure's coming. The disappointment's coming. And it gets you off your game because now you're negative biased. You're looking for something negative to happen because things are going very well. I almost think it's more difficult to stay on top of the mountain because compared to being at the bottom of the mountain, because when you're at the bottom of the mountain, you can't go down any farther. You got nowhere to go but up. But when you're at the top, it is hard to stay up there because what got you there usually isn't what it's going to take to stay there.
Yep. Yeah. It's a whole nother, and that's back to also when you brought identity, it's a whole nother identity, right? That you get to do. And listen, what got you there? And sometimes the hypervigilance or never being satisfied. I think Bob Proctor talks about this. It's like, it's okay to never be satisfied because you're always right? You're always striving for the next thing. That's what sometimes really helps people, right? It's like, okay, I'm satisfied, but I don't want to become complacent, right? There's like a fine line. I don't want to be complacent, but I also want to keep doing and unlearning and coming into my full potential because I don't know about you, but when I go, I want to be totally used up, right? Like higher source, God, Buddha, Jesus, whatever you believe in, energy. I want to be used up for everything that I am here to do, right? Here to serve, here to be. And so, yeah, it's like not being complacent, but also like basking in the goodness that comes, right? The hard work. So yeah, I think that's really true.
Okay, Kelly, let's do another shift. You talk about helping people. You share with your people tools to help them uncover and heal from unconscious blocks so that they can claim and live in their personal power. Let's first start out by you explaining what you mean by personal power.
Yeah. So for me, it is totally being in full, like full transparency in my voice, sharing my gifts, sharing my talents. Like you said, not comparing, not second guessing. When time stops, I could do the thing for hours on hours, like really, and being unapologetic, like not caring, just being, again, back to the childlike wonder. I remember when I was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 and just like painting and like just being in my elements and not caring, just not caring about anything else. Right. So for me, coming back into your power, reclaiming your power, or just using like your authentic voice, it's like that energy of you being and you being here to give your gifts to the world, whatever that may be. And that may look like different things in each season. So a lot of times, right? It could be everyone experiences different things, right? From abuse to whatever it is. And it's like, okay, we get to claim those pieces back and rise even,
But one of the things that I got a download on when I was listening to you is the concept of personal power equals being 100% authentically you, not trying to be somebody else, not trying to hide who you are, but showing up fully and 100% you, pure you. And, when you start looking at the phrase perfectly imperfect, there's only been one in my mind, perfect person on the planet. And I'm not it. And I'm not going to be it. Every single day I have my challenges, and I'm sure you can ask my wife and kids, and I have my moments, but it's like, can I just be happy to be who I am? Like even on this podcast, can we really just be who we are? Can we just have a conversation about this topic of mindset and power and authenticity and transparency? Or do we got to put on a show?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do both. Sometimes I'm 100% unadulterated me. And other times I'm thinking something, my voice, I'm telling myself something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's on that?
Yeah. I love that. Cause it's also like that conversation of like wearing masks, right? Of being like, okay, I'm going to wear this mask again, it's like the approval. There's 3 things that one of my coaches said, people are driven by approval, control, or safety and security. One of these 3 things, we're all like, we're one of those 3 at every point, right? We're kind of acting, or maybe we have our masks on. And I remember on social media, actually, I wanted to post this post around body image, and it was just me in a bikini at a beach, like no big deal, but I had a lot of things at risk. Like I had contract signed, professional speaking gig, like my clients, like some of them, very, so I
Are
was
you
like,
crazy? What?
well, yeah, I was like, I can't post this.
Exactly.
And he's like, and he said this phrase that was so powerful. I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, what you give power to has power over you. And I was like, oh my gosh, what you give power to has power over you. So I love that you say that, because it's like the authenticity. It's like we're putting on the mask, but we might be saying something in our heads. Like we have all these things, and it's like, are we putting on a show? Are we being authentic? And it's just like taking a step back of the awareness of being like, okay, who's running this show? And it really goes back to, right? Like the unlearning stuff. And I was like, so after that conversation, I posted the picture. Here we go. My whole body was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose I didn't lose any clients. I didn't have any speaking engagements cancel me. But who knows? It could have happened. And who knows? It may still, right? I mean, this was like a year or 2 ago. So, but I always stuck with that phrase always stuck with me, being like, wow, what you give power to has power over you. Yeah. And it was just it was powerful for me to hear at that moment in time.
Okay. So I love that. And I love the fact that you posted it. And I'm glad that you didn't have any negative repercussions. And so you must have looked good.
Well, then again, right? So now let's go back into what you just said, the stories in my head. Because when I posted it, I was like, I didn't think I looked good. Right. So it's that I still had conversations being like, and a full body experience being like, I was so nervous. And I was like, this is not like the typical. And so this is also like for women and little girls, like all of this, like the beauty standards, the social media, all of that. Right. So it's really important. And that's also why I posted it. Cause I'm like, okay, I'm not going to lead and I'm not a body positivity activist. What is that? Body positivity activist. I'm not like one of those. It's just, but I had those thoughts in my head, even up to the point where before I even hit, post. So,
Okay. So I love that statement of what you give power to has power over you.
yeah.
And I want to substitute a word.
Yeah.
Who you give power to
Yes.
has power over you. So you have to, through personal power, you have to reclaim that power by divorcing yourself from the whats and the whos that have power, that you've given the power to, because they didn't have the power until you give it to them. When you went through that exercise of actually doing the photo shoot, you put yourself in a tough situation. You put yourself in a position where you had to make a decision. You put yourself in a position where you had to think through all the potential repercussions and the ripples of what if, all the what if stuff. And that created internal conflict. That if you wouldn't have did the photo shoot and you were dreaming about it or thinking about it, it wouldn't have been as intense. But as soon as you made that photo shoot and you had those photos available, now your inner voice, I call it the pocket voice, and you are having conversations 24/7.
Yeah.
You're like making dinner and you're thinking, oh, I wonder about this, all leading up to pushing that button that says post. And when you posted, you actually reclaimed
Yeah.
because you had more lightness because nothing happened. Nothing happened. The internet didn't blow up. Social media didn't, break down. I mean, all these things and you didn't get terminated from any opportunities. So I think we play a game in our minds where we can always find a way to lose. We play a game in our minds where we're always searching for why we shouldn't do what our heart tells us to do. And so it probably goes back to our inner child when we thought we just unabashedly did something and somebody's like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And then you're like, oh, okay. That's like the elephant being tied up to the metal pole. Somebody in authority told you shouldn't have done that. Now you start wondering, what else shouldn't you do?
Exactly. Exactly. That's exact. And guess what? Let's throw a little, what if something, I lost the client or what if right? Like, okay. And because even if I lost the client, there's other clients and other speaking opportunities that I would have gained. And the same thought process and the same similar experience happened when I left my corporate job. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving like one of the best like positions. What if I fail? Like when I go out on my own as an entrepreneur, what if? And I
Okay,
stayed
so
way long. Greg, I said way, way long. I couldn't leave corporate years before I did. And still, but that fear was strong. That was strong. And it's everyone's, but that, and once I did, and then I was like, wait, I can always go back to corporate. Like, what am I doing? Like, even if the worst case scenario in your head happens, okay, then what? Right? Like
everybody, and when I say everybody, I don't mean everybody, but most people, they stay longer than they should. They have, and it's because of that dialogue that we have with our inner voice that says, are you sure? Is this the right time? What, are you really prepared for this next move? Are you going to be able to make the same money? You need that security. You don't want to, leave the security of getting paid every 2 weeks. But here's, this is one funny thing that could have happened is somebody said, hey, we really liked your photo shoot. We'd like you to be a keynote and we'd like you to perform in your swimming suit. And then you could have said, I'd be happy to, as long as my fee is double what I was originally planning on charging you. You could be the bikini keynoter.
exactly.
Okay.
That's
I don't know where that came from, but every now and then I have a little bit of a funny bone. Okay. I'm looking at our time, and I want to respect your time. And I want to thank you so much for being on today. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you're like, oh my God, this is perfect. It's the bow on the on the present to kind of sum up what we talked about today?
Yeah, I guess one thing I always say, like, if it's in your head and on your heart, do it and be discerning. Like just listen to I like to call it, not a new phrase, like your inner GPS, your inner guidance system. There's been a lot of times where I ignored that, or I just wasn't listening to myself. It's a self-trust conversation. And so I look back, I don't regret anything. And I would have been like, I wish I listened. And so now even creates more of a deeper, okay, self-trust and discernment, and I know best. And even if I make a quote unquote wrong decision and I make a left hand turn when I should have made, I hate the word should, but really made the right hand, I'm always going to be led to but the most important thing for me was, okay, self-trust, what you're doing. And it's not to say don't hire coaches or experts or not that. It's just more of like, use discernment, trust yourself first. And again, it goes back to like not giving your power away, to someone who is maybe better than you in something else, but you give all your power away and then you like self-abandon yourself. You're like, what did I just do? Right. So that's the one thing I would say.
I would add to that, Kelly, that we buy into the lie that there's only one way. And using GPS as an example, if we type in an address on our phone, it gives us like 3 different options.
Yeah.
And we end up at the same destination. One has tolls, one has highways, variety of different things. There's not just one way to get to where you want to go. So if you have a dream and you have a goal and you do make a wrong turn, you can still end up where you wanted to end up.
Yeah. Beautifully said. That's it. That's it.
All right, sister. We've had Kelly Lynn Adams on Pro Mindset today. If people want to check you out, check out your photos, no pun intended there. But if they want to, find you, where can they find you?
Just my website, my name, KellyLynnAdams.com, and all the social media and everything is there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on Pro Mindset. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you the next time.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.